Hey guys, I'm a Dimension Jumper and today I'll be reviewing Hollow Knight, which was released back in 2017. Now, the main plot of this game is that you're playing this character called the Knight, and you have to explore this kingdom called Hollow Nest, because there was this disease called the Infection, and you basically have to try and stop the disease altogether, because the king of Hollow Nest basically had to seal it away, but then it grew. It escaped from the seal, and it kind of like went. It basically grew the infection, and it basically you're trying to figure out why and how, as well as trying to stop the infection. And throughout the course of the game, you fight various bosses, and you meet up with this character called the Hornet, who will get her own game. Who basically eventually gets her own game, and called Hollow Knight Silk Song, which I'll be talking about in the next few weeks. And yeah, this game is basically a Metroidvania based game in which the best way I can explain this from someone who hadn't played a Metroidvania based game before playing Hollow Knight is that it's this sort of like game where you get to explore this vast world, and each area that you explore has different areas, and you can gain additional powers and abilities, extra life, as well as like you might get like specific things to like to help you with your powers and abilities. Like you might get something that might help you with get a powerful attack, or might get you some defense, that sort of thing. And this whole game is really, really cool because it's one of those things that it's challenging, but but a lot of the things that you do reward you. So, for example, there's an ability you can get called the Super Dash or something like that, or the Ultimate Dash, and basically what this does is makes you basically make yourself a rocket, and basically blasts you throughout a particular area until you either stop using the ability or you land on a particular platform, or you hit a particular wall that's part of a platform. And that's a really cool thing because you can then use it in a particular area that's full of thorns, and you can just dash, or you basically super dash through the thorns and then reach a new area that you might not have explored before. And that's a really cool thing because like you can either bounce jump on the thorns, or use the dash ability. But if you want to actually get to the other side of the platform, you will have to use the super dash ability. And yeah, it's one of those really cool games of like you get new abilities, you can find things to help you throughout the game, and the bosses as well. They are really, really fun because they're like these insect based of enemies. So like you've got like these fly guys. You can fight. You've also got these giant sort of characters, no, not characters, these giant bosses that you can fight, and it's all really fun. And also, it's kind of like it's quite difficult. So it's like if this is your first time experiencing a Metroidvania based game, I would say do practice a bit. Like if you keep on losing to a particular boss, I would say I'll basically say just try and practice the fighting against other enemies, like non-boss type enemies first, and then come back to fight the boss you might have lost to again. As well as when you do fight a particular boss and you are struggling with it, do practice learning their moves, their attack patterns, that sort of thing, and see what kind of moves will come next, and you can try and predict it. Also, when you collect a particular medallion, or it's more of a talisman. Whenever you collect a talisman, always try and mix and match them, because each talisman will have a unique ability. So like you've got one which is probably the most useful one, which is like sort of like compass. It's basically a compass, so you can see yourself moving from one area to the next. You've got one that can help you heal faster. That you've got one that can that can regenerate your soul. That's the thing you can use to either use it as an attack or heal yourself. You've got one that can summon thorns as a more defensive type of measure, that sort of thing. And you've got a variety of other ones. And yeah, I think always try and mix and match unique different talismans. So like you might have one that's offensive and one that's defensive, or you might have both that are offensive, and you might have two that are defensive. And it's always cool to like try and figure out how you might try and tackle a particular boss. And yeah, it's always cool to see to try and like figure out, okay, I've tried it this way, let me try and fight a boss another way, or something like that. And each area is quite cool because you've got one that's a complete mine, or basically a mine full of crystals. Then you've got another one that's basically all this sort of like jungle based one. And then you've got the inner city, where you've got like buildings and you've got like a fountain, that sort of thing. And it's just a really cool game to play through, so yeah. And now it's time for some gameplay. When it comes to the gameplay, you basically go from side to side, so like left to right, depending on where you are. And each area has their own unique biome. So for example, you've got a green path, which is here. And this is basically your grass-based area, and then you've got like other areas like the City of Tears, which is basically this like big, giant, like complex labyrinth, and you have to basically explore each of it to like gain new areas and stuff like that. And also, if you look at the top left-hand corner, you can see that I've got a bit of a broken, I would say, shell sort of thing, and that's because every time you get defeated by a particular enemy, you will lose all of your health, and if you can see the glowing eyes, that is where you got defeated by a particular enemy or an obstacle or whatever. And if you get back to that bit, you can regain everything that you lost. And yeah, and the combat is pretty simple. You just you basically just use, if you're playing on the PlayStation version, you press square, which is the version I'm playing on. And also, hang on, you can also find various items and abilities and stuff like that that can help you on an adventure, and it's very useful. And yeah, and also I would say try and experiment and explore, and if you just wait and just like for like an area to that's safe, you can heal. It's quite nice, and you can also heal during like boss fights if you're on a pinch. But yeah, I think this game is really fun. It's got like sort of like cool. The art styles, like I think is one of the many things that does make this game really fun and enjoyable, because you do get like, because you got like, you know, you've got your Mario games and like your Zelda games and other games that have like these big 3D based you have like 3D they go from like traditional like 3D to 2D and stuff like that. And with Hollow Knight, everything is like in 2D, and it's really beautiful, and I think the way it's handled is really nice, and I think the way you do exploration is really nice. And also, I think when it comes to like the game, always try and practice and stuff like that. And I think this game does have a good sort of risk-reward system. So if you're like going through this area, for example, always try and see what you can do and how you might be able to use your different abilities. So I can go now, Oh no. Okay, so because I landed on the platform, I am now safe, which I think is a really good thing because if you're in areas like this, you will be safe. I think it's quite nice. Oh, and I nearly had the thing. So, no. So hopefully once the thing comes back, or the shadow. Oh no. Okay, so because I lost all my lives, all my hit points, I now have to go back to where I last rested. So which is here. So if I bring up the map, for example, there we go. You can see that there are a variety of benches, and wherever you sit, you restore all your health, and you restore, and then every time you get rid of all your hit points, you will come back to the point where you left, and also you can travel to the different areas. So let's say I want to go to Hidden Station. I'll then be taken all the way to the Hidden Station, which I think is quite nice because then you can then just do more stuff and just or do some more exploring and stuff like that. And I think each area is really cool and unique because like with the area we were just in, that was like more lush and you got like lots of colour. With something like the Hidden Station, it's still got some colour, but like it feels like all the colour has been drained from you, and with the only source of colour when it comes to the area that you're in is from Hollow Knight or from the Knight themselves. So that's really cool, and I think as a whole, I think the game is a really fun, it's a really fun ride. It's a fun game, and I think it's one of those games that you can have fun with and you can practice a whole lot with if you're like trying to like explore or whenever you're fighting a particular boss, that sort of thing. So yeah, so that's been it for the gameplay. Now it's time to go back to the review. So as a whole, Hollow Knight is a fun game, and it's one of those. I think it's one of those games that even if you find it challenging, and it does get challenging the more you play it. I think it's one of those games. It's kind of like if you're playing something like Elden Ring or Dark Souls, or one of those games that is difficult, but even if you find it difficult and you want to continue playing games like that, you will get better. And I would say, as I said before, I would highly suggest you practice a whole lot with all the different moves and abilities and things that you've collected throughout the game, just so you can have a view of how you can use each of your abilities, as well as how each section that you explore is like, so that you can be like, okay, this area has this kind of enemy, as well as some enemies that can appear in this area. I can practice fighting both or going to a particular area, and also I can fight a particular boss until I figure out their attack patterns, their timings, and how they do that, and how they might use particular move in a particular order, that sort of thing. Because a lot of the bosses, they all, for example, with Hornet, for example, her moves can be random sometimes. Well, they are random, but because she's got a bunch of different moves, she will, for example, might use her dash attack, or she might just throw her weapon towards you. They might do it again and again, but then she might switch it up and then just jump into the air and just sort of do this sort of like big, sort of like defensive thing with her string, that sort of thing, that's attached to her weapon. And yeah, it's all about timings and using your own abilities. So, what I would say when it comes to the bosses, always look out for timings for the bosses, as well as make sure you time your own attacks so you can deal enough damage. And yeah, it's a really fun game, and it's really satisfying when you defeat a particular boss, because the bosses are quite difficult, and it's kind of like when you fight like again an Elden Ring boss or something like that. It's satisfying when you fight them or when you defeat them, because you figured out their attack patterns, and even if you have even if they defeated you a bunch of times, it feels so satisfying when you've taken off all of their HP and you're able to progress to the next area and something like that. So yeah, so that's been my review for Hollow Knight. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.